Hello and welcome to this session, Getting into the Cloud with TypeScript. My name is Marcia Villalba. I'm a developer advocate for AWS. I've been coding for over 15 years in production environments, so I've been working in all kind of different environments, from on-premise to the cloud, from backend to front-end database. I've been doing a lot of different things. I'm the host of a YouTube channel called Faas, where I post twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays videos related to cloud computing, serverless, and software engineer practices. And I do weekly streams as well, where you can ask any questions about AWS and all its technologies. Also, my Twitter DMs are open, and I'm very happy to answer questions and point you to the right information if you're looking for something in particular. So the agenda for today is a little tricky. I only have 30 minutes and I want to walk you through a lot of things that will teach you a little bit of everything so you can get inspired. So we are going to talk first about the cloud. Then we are going to talk about serverless. That is like the easiest way to get into the cloud. And I will be going into AWS Lambda and API Gateway. You will know what they are in a second. Then I will be talking about infrastructure as code. That is a very important part of cloud computing. And I will be talking in particular about this new framework called AWS CDK that you might be interested in. And finally, we wrap everything with a demo. So this is the agenda for the next 30 minutes. Maybe there is a lot of things that you don't have a clue. And the idea of this talk is not that you become an expert, but you get inspired to start trying things out. So the first thing I want to address is, what is cloud computing? It's just basically someone else computing. Well, kind of. It's a computer in the internet, and basically you will be served services, infrastructure like networking, storage, computing through the internet, like if it was electricity or something like that. Some of the main benefits of using the cloud is basically that you don't need to make a lot of investments in advance. You basically are billed every month, like if it was electricity, so you are basically billed in a variable way depending on how much you use of those resources. You don't need to guess any capacity, you don't need to think about how big, all these kind of things that we need to figure out when we are buying servers and things like that. Everything becomes faster and more agile, so you can basically go global in minutes and grow and scale up your application as you need. Or if you have something you want to try, you can build a minimal viable product and then in a second take it out to production and share with all your customers. It's a really nice place for developers to play because you don't need to worry too much about the infrastructure, and you get all the resources that big companies like Netflix, Airbnb, and others are using, so it's a great place to start playing. So I said serverless is the easiest way to get into cloud computing. So what it means that something is serverless? Well, it needs, for something or a component or a service to be serverless, it needs to fulfill these 4 promises. First one, it needs to scale automatically, so you don't need to worry about how much traffic you are going to have, how big or how small your traffic is going to be. The service will adapt automatically to the amount of traffic. That's why I was saying that this is a really easy way to get started. In other solutions, you need to think a little bit about scaling up and down, and that might be a problem for newcomers. Then, this is something inherent to the cloud. You pay for how much you use. You are getting a bill every month with what you used in the previous month, so it's very close related to what you were using. Then you know how to manage any infrastructure, and when we go to the cloud, we already stop worrying about the physical infrastructure, but we still have some things you have in mind, like operating system, memory, hard drives, and things like that. When we go to serverless, all of that doesn't exist, and we just focus on our application in building the important things for our application to work out there. And finally, it comes with high availability built in. All the components are resilient, and if one data center has any problem, The components will be distributed around multiple data centers, or we call them in AWS availability zones. So your application is high available out of the box, and you don't need to think about how you will make it high available. Sure, if you want to do a global application, you need to do some kind of architecture changes, but out of the box, it comes with this regional high availability that is amazing. So serverless components comes in two flavors. It comes with the typical flavor, the one that we know, that is functions as a service, Lambda functions, for example. We are going to talk about it in a second, and then backend as a service that we are going to talk next. So functions as a service is basically the compute part of serverless. Everybody thinks that this is the biggest part of serverless, but it's just a portion of the different offering that there is out there for serverless components. Functions as a service, it's available in a lot of cloud providers and also in open source projects, but I will be using the definition from AWS Lambda, that is the service that pioneered this, to define what is functions as a service. And you will see that it aligns very closely to the definition of serverless. So basically, AWS Lambda lets you run code without provisioning or managing servers. Just upload your code to Lambda, and Lambda takes care of everything required to run and scale your code with high availability. So until here we have basically all the different things that we mentioned in the definition of a serverless component. No managing of serverless, scaling, high availability, and things like that. So basically, Lambda is a platform where you upload your code. You can set up your code to automatically be triggered from other AWS services or call it directly from any web or mobile application. So these Lambda functions have the characteristics that they are idle until something triggers them. And what can trigger a Lambda function? Well, many things. It can be a change in the state, a new message in a queue, a new record in a database, a new file in storage. It can be a new HTTP request. It can be somebody press a button or write something in a box. So many different things can trigger a Lambda function. And then Lambda functions can be written in any language that you imagine, and then you can also bring your own custom runtimes. Then the Lambda function, what it can do whatever you imagine. It can call other AWS service, it can run some business logic and do some processing or aggregation or whatever you imagine. It can do calls to HTTP resources, I don't know, whatever you imagine. So then we have the second flavor, as I said, that it was the managed services, and these are services that are adhering to the four promises of serverless and do one thing in particular. For example, we have S3, that is a storage service, SQS to send messages to queues, queue system. Then we have DynamoDB, that is a database service. There is way many out there. This is just a little bit of some of the services. These services are services that you will connect to your, for example, function through an API, or you can connect through an event, or there are different ways to integrate these services, but you don't need to build them or install them or manage them in any way. They exist there, you use them, and that's it. The one that I want to show you today is API Gateway. So we have Lambda, that is our compute, and API Gateway, that is the front door from our application. It helps you to create, maintain, monitor, and secure APIs. And you can have REST APIs or WebSocket APIs. It comes with a lot of features that allows you to do all kind of things in your APIs, like security, throttling, caching. For example, if you want to have APIs that are behind the paywall, you can define which users get so many requests or which user gets less. So you can have all kind of different things managed by API Gateway. It's a very powerful service. So if we connect API Gateway and Lambda, we have a simple backend that you can send an HTTP call, and Lambda can do some business logic and return it. So this is like the simplest web backend that you can imagine. So now we have learned a little bit what is cloud, a little bit what is serverless, and we have talked about Lambda and API Gateway. Now it's time to move to the other part of what is infrastructure as code. So basically, in the old times, we have machines, and we went into all the machines, and we type commands, and we change how these machines behave, and it was quite painful. Because if you didn't do the same changes in one machine and then you buy a new one, then you need to remember what you did, you need to write some document. So then we have this idea of infrastructure as code, that is to write a script that we can run into as many machines as possible. When we work with the cloud and with serverless, we have the same approach. We will not have access to the physical machines like these ones, but we will have access to the AWS resources, and we can always go to the AWS console and do things there with our little mouse. And then when we want to create it in a new different environment, or we want to replicate it, we need to go again with our little mouse and remember, did I type this or did I write that? Did I tick this box? Didn't not? So the idea of infrastructure as code is that you can script that, and then you can build resources, in this case in the cloud, without really needing to go to the console. You write it as a script and you deploy it as it was code. So in this way, the infrastructure is repeatable, it's predictable, you can have it in different environments, and you can have it in different AWS accounts, you can share it with your peers and things like that. So in this way also you can release infrastructure changes using the same tools as you do for code changes. You can use GitHub, you can use Jira, you can use whatever you're using for tracking your changes. You can do pull requests, peer reviews, you can add this code into your CI/CD pipeline, have linting, have unit tests, all of that. And finally, you can replicate in production a staging environment, and then you can have a development environment, and every developer can have their own environment, and you can enable this continuous testing and have multiple environments where everything is the same, because you have the same script that is deployed in multiple environments. So when we talk about infrastructure as code in AWS, we have this native tool called CloudFormation, and this is the native common language from AWS to provision infrastructure in the cloud. It's also a service inside AWS that allows you to build the infrastructure. So we will talk about CloudFormation as these two things. The thing with CloudFormation that is written in YAML or in JSON, and it's very verbose. You need to define everything and all the outputs that you want to have from your infrastructure. And a lot of the times you are not really aware of what are those outputs. You would like to have a little bit more opinionated framework that will tell you those defaults or those basic things that need to be there but are not really that important for you. So for that, the AWS Cloud Developer Kit was created. And this is an amazing kit that allows you to shorten the learning curve into AWS. So basically with this, you can use languages like TypeScript to define your infrastructure in a way that you can read it and understand it. It comes with a lot of defaults, so when you are building infrastructure, you don't need to think about all these different parameters that you need to configure. Even if you don't know what they mean, you need to configure them in the past using CloudFormation. Now with CDK, everything comes with a default unless you provide some value for it. So that's really nice. And this also comes with some tools and workflows that are familiar to developers. It comes with ways to create abstractions and constructs that you can build up and reutilize in the code. So this is a super interesting way to start getting started in the cloud. And if you're a TypeScript developer, you will be super familiar to getting started in building your first little infrastructure in the cloud using TypeScript and the CDK framework. So basically, you can use any language to develop in CDK. The ones that are available are Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, Java, and C# and more are coming in the pipeline. And you use all these basic functionalities from the language, so you don't need to kind of learn something new from scratch. And it comes with multiple components. The first one is the core framework, where we have the application at the top level. In this case, we are talking about a TypeScript application, for example. And then inside the application, you can have multiple stacks. These are deployed independently. These are stacks of resources, and these stacks of resources can have multiple resources that belong, for example, to the same microservice. You can have 1 stack, 2 stacks, as many as you need. So you can build your whole application inside this CDK application. Then we have a construct library. These are reutilizable bits and pieces that you can use in your stacks to build faster. So there is, for example, for serverless, there is a construct that is the basic combo, that is the API Gateway, Lambda, and Dynamo. Dynamo is the database, the NoSQL database. So if you combine these three, you have a serverless backend that is extremely scalable and secure, and you can use that construct for that particular bit, and you don't need to rewrite it. You just use it in your stack. You just import it, and voila. And then we have the CDK CLI, and this is a set of tool sets that you will get in your CLI, where you can deploy, you can do some testing, you can do all kind of interesting things. So basically how this works, you write your code, cheeky, then you use the AWS CLI to synthesize CloudFormation, because at the end of the day, CDK is a language that is built on top of CloudFormation that will convert into CloudFormation, that is this native AWS infrastructure as code, and that will create a CloudFormation template that then will get deployed to the cloud and will provision all the resources you need. So basically you just write your code in TypeScript. It's something you're familiar, and you deploy it through the AWS CLI, and voila, you're done. So now we have covered quite a lot. We have done the cloud, what is serverless, Lambda, and API Gateway. Then we have gone through the other path and talk about infrastructure as code and CDK. And now it's time to wrap everything up with a demo. So this is a super simple demo using these components and the knowledge that we just acquired. The first thing we want to do is install AWS CDK in our computers. That is a node package, so we do npm I global AWS CDK, you install it and you get it in your computer. CDK updates a lot because it's a very vibrant project with a lot of changes and a lot of community inputs and so many things. So I recommend that you will keep updating this project all the time. At least every week there is a new release. So that's something to have in mind. You can find a lot of information on how to install it and all about the package in this GitHub repo. It's an open source project, so all the information you need is there. If you have any bugs or something, you can always raise issues. If you want to see something being developed, you can also raise an issue and let the developers know. Most of the developers are AWS employees. So in order to get started with CDK, after you have installed the CLI, you need to type create a new directory, get inside the directory, and then you will need to type CDK init sample app. This will initialize the sample application that comes with some things inside, and then we go to the language, in this case TypeScript. So then this application gets initialized and you open it in an IDE. In this case I'm using Visual Studio Code, and you can see the project structure. You will see a bin folder where the application starts. That's like the root of your application. All the stacks will be imported there. In this case we only have one stack, and you can see the different stacks inside a folder called lib, and there will be all the stacks. In this case we only have one. And then we have the functions folder, and there is where we put the code for our Lambda functions if we have one. So in this case there is one function and the code will be there. Then the rest are the known modules, the test folders, chest configuration, TypeScript configuration, and all these things that we will find in any TypeScript project. So then in the root of the application, in that file that we saw in the bin, the CDK serverless get started TS, we will see something like this that is calling or importing all the stacks that we have and then basically creating a new stack. So if we have multiple, then we will create them here. Then if we go to one of the individual stacks, then here we have only one. We need to import all the different AWS resources. In this case, I will be creating an API gateway that is connected to a Lambda function, so small backend, serverless backend. So I need to import API gateway and I need to import the Lambda component. And also we need to import a CDK core library. Then the first thing I will do is initialize the stack using this constructor, and then from there we can move into creating the different components. So the first component I want to create is the Lambda itself. So for creating a new Lambda function is as easy as saying new Lambda using that import that we just used, new Lambda function, and then we pass a name. In this case, I call it Lambda handler, very original. We say a runtime. I'm using Node.js, and the runtime is the language that the Lambda function code is written itself. Then we say where is the code, where is the code for these Lambda functions, and we will say that it's in the folder functions. And then inside of the folder function, you need to look for a file called function and a method called handler, and that's where my function needs to start executing. So that's how you define a Lambda function. It takes 4 lines of code, and you have a Lambda function that is working. Then we want to create this API gateway that is connected to Lambda, and for that we will do again using this import, this API gateway library that we just import. We are going to create a REST API called Hello API. And then from there we will define in the root of the API a path hello and a method get that will be integrated to the Lambda function that we just created. So in this way now we have a Lambda function that is integrated to an API gateway. That's all the infrastructure we need. Then we go to the code inside the function, and this is a simple, basically what you will find in that method handler, that is just sending an HTTP response with the word hello and the header text HTML and the status got 200. Nothing fancy. When we are ready, we type CDK deploy, and this will deploy the whole thing in the cloud. It will do the synthesization into CloudFormation, and then it will deploy that CloudFormation template into the cloud. Then we will get back an URL like that. You can see there that I have an URL that says blah 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 execute api.west1. That's the place where I deploy this. Amazon aws.com/prod/hello. Do you remember that we defined the API gateway to have the path hello and the method get? So if I ping this, I send a message here, I should get a hello back, and you can see in my response there is a hello and a status 200, and the type is an HTML. So you can get the code for this simple application going to this GitHub repo. There you will find it. I also have a video in my YouTube channel on where I build a little bit more complex application. I will leave you the link as well. You can find it in the screen, so go and check it out. And to recap, we have learned what is the cloud in like 2 sentences. Then we learned a little bit more about serverless and why it's so cool and what is great for people to want to get started with the cloud. We talk about the core service that is Lambda, an API gateway that is a very useful server combined together to build a serverless backend. Then we talk about infrastructure as cloud, that is a very important paradigm when building in the cloud. And we talk about AWS CDK, that is a super easy way to get started building infrastructure in the cloud. We wrap everything up with a demo, and we're done. Before going, I want to share with you like lots of links. These links are different places where you can learn more about CDK. There is guides, there is patterns, there is all kind of places where you can go and learn. I leave it in the screen so you can take a screenshot, but really these are great places. Also, there is these different websites that you can go and check it out. There is workshops, the CDK workshop, then the Amazon.com CDK page or the Visual Studio Code page. And you can go to the different places and chat with the developers like the Gitter and the GitHub for the CDK, and you can go and check it out. So thanks a lot for your time. I hope you got inspired to try all this. I know it's a lot of new information, but I think these short talks are for inspiring and to get your hands into something new that you have not tried out. If you want to get started with AWS, I recommend you to check all the resources I mentioned previously, and you can find a lot of information as well in my YouTube channel, where I have a lot of series on building from serverless from scratch, AWS from scratch, and other frameworks like Amplify or CDK that are great ways to get started with AWS. So thank you for your time and have a great day. Bye bye.